Jesus says in John chapter 10 that he is the gate for the sheep. Those who enter by him will be saved. Those who try to climb or break into the kingdom by some other way are thieves and robbers. I'll just read a quick passage here about Israel, but it applies to us today because many are on the same path as the Jews that this was written about. Romans 10:1-4, it says, "Brothers, my heart's desire and prayer to God for the Israelites is for their salvation. For I testify about them that they are zealous for God, but not on the basis of knowledge, because they were ignorant of God's righteousness and sought to establish their own righteousness. They did not submit to God's righteousness. For Christ is the end of the law to bring righteousness to everyone who believes." Notice the fault of Israel. They were so focused on the law of Moses, and they were confident in their own ability to stand upright under the crushing weight of the law, and yet they were totally ignorant of the righteousness that God requires. The kind of righteousness that God requires is his own. It's a righteousness that is so far beyond the capability of man that it is completely unattainable by man's effort. And this is the fatal flaw that Israel could simply not see throughout the entire Old Testament narrative. Every step of the way, they failed to keep their end of the covenant. But interestingly, God is not shocked by their failure. It was a covenant that was never intended to save. It was a ministry of death and condemnation, as Paul clearly says in 2 Corinthians. So God became a man in the person of Jesus Christ. He mirrored the steps of the Old Testament Israel. Every step that Israel failed, he succeeded. He fulfilled all the law and all the prophets and stood before his own people, but they could not see him for who he was, the righteousness of God. So here we are today, and we go to church, and we sometimes walk in the shadow of Old Testament Israel, making this same tragic and deadly mistake. And the plain and simple truth of it is that the righteousness that God requires, it is the righteousness that comes as a free gift by faith in Christ. And as we know, gifts, they are not earned by a wage, or they are not bought with a price. A true gift is received with a grateful heart. The righteousness that is granted to me and you is a gift given as a covering through faith. It's Christ's righteousness and a perfect record that is given to us by belief. And that is why it is called the gospel. In other words, the good news. Romans 4:4 says, "Now the wages of the worker are not credited as a gift, but as an obligation. However, to the one who does not work, but believes in him who justifies the ungodly, his faith is credited to him as righteousness."